Joining me on the podcast is elite runner Anya Culling. Now, 3 years ago, I met Anya during a walk in Norfolk. She's honestly blown me away with her journey. When I first met her, she'd only just really taken up running. Her story is remarkable and one that leaves so many questions to be answered. In the space of 2 years, she had gone from not really being a runner to shaving off 2 hours on her personal best time, with her quickest time to date of 2 hours and 34 minutes, earning herself a call-up to represent England. Anya's story has gripped the nation and has sent a message that it's never too late to start something. I honestly love her vulnerability and her rawness. No matter the position she finishes, she is, in my opinion, the people's champion. Every time she steps foot on that start line, it's a reminder of what's possible to anyone and to people of all abilities. From a first-time runner to your elites, we can all take inspiration from her story. So I have some incredibly exciting news. Now, some of you may already know this, but for those of you who don't, I've just had my first book published by Penguin called Fortune Favours the Brave. Now, the book consists of 76 short lessons on finding strength and vulnerability. Now, the questions I'd like to put to you: do you feel lost? Surrounded by the wrong people? Do you find it hard to see a future? Do you struggle with your mental health? Have you been looking for a reason to live? Are you wanting to find fulfillment in life? Do you wish to test yourself both mentally and physically? And are you struggling to find direction or purpose in life? Now, I've battled most of my life with the questions I've just asked you. And over the years, I found solutions to overcome them and achieve the goals I had set myself. It is never too late to start a new chapter. You just need to be brave enough to take that first step. Now, if you're wanting to take that step, you can pre-order my book now on Amazon, Waterstones, or simply clicking the link in my bio on my Instagram handle, Joshua_Patterson_JP now. Hello, Anya.
Hi, Josh.
Oh God, this is really surreal, but just I've had such a smile on my face since I knew you were coming onto the pod. It's what a journey it's been.
It's so fun. I messaged my mum just before coming, being like, "You'll never guess what I'm doing today."
It's absolutely crazy. I mean, guys, to give some context about Anya, this was back in 2021.
Yeah.
I was taking a walk with a really good close friend of mine, and this girl and two guys, and was there someone's dad?
Yeah.
Someone's dad basically came up and we've been running, and we started chatting, and we kind of got a few photos together. And what really stood out for me about the group you were with was it a family friend, or
Yeah.
was running in hiking boots?
Yeah, he was training for the Marines, so he was in his combat boots.
He was a real method actor, wasn't he? He just really fulfilled the role next level. I just remember just chatting to my mate being like, I've done some crazy things, but running in boots, I was like, it's just next level. And you were just the sweetest person, and it's just phenomenal to see someone who was just kind of going for a leisurely run to where you're at right now.
I mean, we were doing a marathon that day, but we decided to do a marathon that morning, and we were just let's see how far we can run. And then we were running and we saw you, and we were like, we have to say hi, because I think, we all knew who you were, and that was going to help us get through this marathon.
Absolutely. So were you training for a marathon, or was it just something as a group you were like, do you know what, should we just go run one?
Yeah, it was the 3rd of January, big Christmas blowout, and then we were like, let's go run a marathon.
Wow. Did you guys have it? I don't even think you had bottles of water or anything, did you?
No, we weren't very prepared, but that was one of the first times I'd ever run a marathon. I think it was the second time, I think.
Had you run an official one prior to that?
Only London Marathon in 2019.
Wow. That's unbelievable. And that was the one that you ran in, was that the one that you ran in 4 hours? Was it 4 hours 20?
So my first marathon in 2019, London Marathon, that was 4 hours 34 minutes.
Wow.
And then that day on the Norfolk coast, we did it in 4.5 again.
And the thing with that particular run though, that was kind of that was you starting out in running? That was very like early days. And that was more just kind of like for headspace than anything.
100%. Yeah. I definitely wasn't a runner. I didn't have a watch. I didn't know how fast I was going. I just wanted to challenge myself.
Had you done any running prior to that at all? Like at school, were you a standout runner?
Absolutely not. My brother was. I would walk the final straight off the 400 meters at sports day.
Wow, that's unbelievable. That's great. I mean, do you ever look back and reflect on these moments and just kind of take it in, or?
I think it's really good to reflect. It kind of sounds weird, and I said it yesterday to someone, but sometimes I use my own journey and remind myself of that as my own inspiration. And just when it's getting tough, just remember like where I've come from and what I'm doing now. And it does actually really help.
What's so unique about you as an individual and your story is that you're not just inspiring individuals who are starting out in running, but you're also inspiring the elite level runners too.
Yeah, it is crazy, and I do kind of love that. I think I have so many friends who are elite and they inspire me like every single day. Like, of course, I want to be the best runner I can be, but they also use me to like check themselves, and they're like, let's stop taking it so seriously. Let's go back to the reason we run. And I kind of have a bit more of an Anya mindset.
For you though, what is, I guess, the end goal? Like, is there one, or is it just keep riding this wave and just see where it ends up?
Only more recently, I've had to consider that a bit. I was definitely on autopilot for the first, year or so of my running journey. Like I was just getting PB after PB. It was amazing. But yeah, my progression was just going up and up. And only recently I've been like, what is kind of success to me? And I've been like watching the European Championships every night this week. And is it to be there on that start line? And I kind of think no. I think I want to live a more rounded life. Like that would be so amazing. Like I want my running to be as good as it possibly can be. But I think success to me is not, some of the elites, I feel like they are so distant from normal runners. And I think a lot of runners don't know who the elites are, like, because it's almost two separate sports. And I definitely don't want to be like untouchable or away. Like I still want to be like a normal girl and inspire like normal people and almost like bridge that gap, like a semi-pro gap.
Yeah, because I guess that's the thing, right? Is that sometimes we can maybe get carried away with our ambitions and lose sight of actually like where we can make the greatest impact.
Yeah.
When you first started out this journey, it was really just to kind of focus on your mental health and like the enjoyment that you were getting from it. I mean, for those of you that don't know Anya, the reason why I think her story is so remarkable, as I touched on just then, her first marathon, you're talking over 4 hours. 2 years later, she's now running a sub 3 hour marathon. I think the fastest time you've run is it 2 hours 44?
2:34.
2:34.
I went from 4:34 to 2:34.
Which is just absolutely phenomenal. And, she's earned herself an England vest. Now, there's so many questions around that because I think from a performance side of things, it comes down to you coming into the sport relatively late in comparison to what the ordinary runner would typically do at that level. And so it's kind of like, is that a psychological thing that you have as an asset? Is that the physical element? It's so confusing. I'm fascinated by it because I think that's what a lot of people probably would be interested in is that something that could be inherited or is that genetics?
I don't think it's genetics. Like my family are sporty. We've always done sport, like cricket, hockey. But they're definitely not runners. It brings me great pride when my family do go a little 5Ks now. I do think it's a lot down to not running as a child. I do almost think if I had run as a child, I would have got far too deep, far too quickly. And I don't know. I don't think I'd be running now. I think when I started in my 20s, I never did, English schools, cross country, or rose through the ranks at junior level. But it meant I had that maturity because when I started, I had this mindset after I got the England vest being like, I have to train like an athlete. I have to be an athlete. And I think if I didn't have that emotional maturity to draw it back a bit, I could have been quite unhealthy. So many of my friends, so many people at that level start to really struggle with it mentally, with diet physically, and like I could almost see myself going that way and taking it far too seriously, not enjoying it. Yeah, maybe struggling with eating, struggling with the competition and comparing myself to others. But yeah, I think starting it at this age and having more to my running journey than just times, it has helped me like stay consistent with it and keep enjoying it.
What do you think has been the biggest challenge you've been faced with?
Knowing whether I want to be an elite athlete or whether I do just want to keep being an everyday runner who's also very good. Like, I don't know. I still want my like USP or whatever to be a good runner. Like, I want people to know that I'm a qualified coach and I do know what I'm talking about. But yeah, also I don't want to give my entire life to running because I love my life and I get so much enjoyment out of it. And maybe one day I will want to give up all those things and really push for the Olympics or something, which would be the most amazing achievement ever. But I am only 25 now and I've got so much time to do that.
Yeah. You know, the success is there. And, you know, I guess with your ability, it's like, when does it realistically get to the point where you have peaked in performance?
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe the answer to that is you can just keep pushing. Like, why could you not compete for the Olympics? But then at the same time, by focusing on something like that, if realistically from the performance side of things, you know, that's where I guess the exceptional runner comes into the mix. Are you going to be chasing something that then has a detrimental effect to your own journey, to your own mental health? Even by saying that, though, that's not me to plant a seed of doubt, because I truly believe you are capable of achieving anything that you wish to. I think it's just a case of like, what means the most to you?
Yeah, exactly. And it's got to be the right timing. If I give everything up, I've got to make sure at that time in my life that is going to fulfill me. Because I think obviously we all talk about balance, but to be the best of the best, there isn't an equal balance of life to training. Like, they give their all to it.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about timing, that I think that's such a good point, where I almost feel like you're the poster person of like, it's never too late to start something. You know, most people would say to get into the Olympics, you have got to be focusing on that from a young age. You could be the first person to focus on something that in your late 20s. And some might argue that, but again, like, you are the difference.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I say. Like, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And I think just putting on your trainers and going out there is going to be the first step and the hardest step.
You know, from an external point of view, looking at you, the asset that you have, as I said, is that you can empathize with so many different individuals. And I think that's such an amazing tool to have, where certainly from a coaching point of view, you can really step into so many different mindsets.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know if you, so a bit of about Josh and I. So when we first met was when I was doing this like marathon with just friends when you were out for your walk. The next time we met was at A6 10K and I'd just come second and I was like in the media tent and I was like behind an Olympian, and that was the next time I saw you and you were like, whoa, what's kind of happened? And I remember literally you saying that exact same thing to me that day, and I was with my mum, and yeah, you were just like, kind of, don't lose touch with everything you're doing, and what you have done is amazing and you are inspiring people, and don't ever doubt yourself. And it's literally what you just said.
No, honestly, I mean, I care a lot about you, and I think your journey, you know, it's such a special one. And, you know, we've had these conversations before where for me, you know, as a friend, I would never want you to lose sight of what it is that you're doing. I mean, I remember, you know, when we were sat in the runner offices and you were kind of questioning and worried about brands that you had signed with and what they may think of you, because certain results weren't necessarily going the way that you wanted them to. But again, this is the conversation we're having, where you started to prioritize your success by the position that you finished rather than the impact you were having. And so for me, it was just reminding you that actually it's the impact that you are having, which is the most important thing. Like, far more people are going to be inspired by the continuation of your journey than by what position you finish. Because ultimately, if you're crossing that finish line and you've got the biggest smile on your face and you're still running exceptional times, irrelevant of how competitive that is, like, that for me was always going to be the priority. And, you know, I'm so happy to see that minor blip that you had. You seem to have come out of it and kind of realigned your focus again.
Yeah, well, I think that was when I was a bit lost and I didn't know which direction I wanted to go in. And I was, so many of my good friends are elite athletes, and a lot of these elite contracts are based on times, and they can almost, they'll get paid extra for hitting a certain time, or in their contract is so many races a year. And a lot of my friends, even if they're injured, they literally have to go and do those races because otherwise they won't get paid. And so it was just kind of in my head that times mean a lot. And yeah, going back to just like keeping smiling and keeping enjoying it. Like before London Marathon this year, obviously I ran 2:44, which is an incredible time. But before that, I was like crying my eyes out a few weeks before, being like, I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm not my fittest I've ever been. I'm actually not going to do the London Marathon. And my friends were like, stop being so stupid. Like, of course you are. And they were kind of putting bets on it, being like, no, she is going to do it. And I was going, I'm genuinely not. Like, I'm not doing it. And then I couldn't have been more grateful, like, after. And that smile was genuine. I know the pictures and people say, like, you smiled the whole time. I loved every second of that marathon. And yeah, I was in the elites, which might be my first and last ever time in the elites. Hopefully not, but I had to do it. Like, I would have been such a sausage not to.
I love the fact you just said sausage. That's epic. Is that a Norfolk thing? I don't know. But every time I call somebody that or refer to something as a sausage, they're like, I'm so confused. What's that got to do with meat? I'm like, come to Norfolk. I think that's amazing. The sport needs champions for people to be invested in, and I think you've brought so much awareness to a sport that is just growing at such an astronomical rate. And I think it's so nice for people to be familiar because, you know, like you touched on there is a lot of phenomenal elite level runners out there, but half of them are not known by the general public. Yeah. And maybe that does just really come down to relatability. The old conventional athlete, really, bar the odd interview they might have on competition day, really were quite reserved and kind of kept to themselves, right?
Yeah.
Whereas obviously now with social media and the changing world, you know, I guess the platform you have and how vocal you are is going to be very, very different to them. And, you know, your incentives are not to race X amount of times a year or to be necessarily that competitive. I think it is really just the presence within the sport.
Yeah, well, I obviously want as many people as possible to get into the sport because it's brought so much to my life that's all I could hope for anyone else. But there are some old school people in running that genuinely don't like what I do. And like, I changed coaches recently and I struggled to find a coach because like, well, I didn't, I've got an amazing coach now, but there were people who didn't want to coach like an influencer. And I was like, well, I'm not, like, I'm a runner. He does a bit on social media as well. And
who is this coach? Do we want to credit him?
Yeah, I do. His name's James T, and he is amazing, and he's coached Olympians down to me, and he puts up with a lot of me because I'm not like to the books, super strict. Like, my training plan is not my Bible, but he is amazing and understands all of that. But even like London Marathon, the elites, there were people trying to like not have me in the elites because I don't like, I did the speed project just before London Marathon, and I was actually told by doing the speed project and having that filmed and things, I'm not quite sure what it was, but they were like, you're in breach of your London Marathon contract and you can't be in the elites. And I was like, right, so I'm actually not doing the marathon now.
Was this the athletes were saying this or the organisation?
Just a few like messages on Instagram being like, are you aware? And obviously I panicked a lot, but I do think, yeah, and then, sorry, I've so many thoughts going to my head.
You fire out those thoughts as many as you like.
And it was amazing after London Marathon, and one of my biggest inspirations is Gabby Logan. Like, I would love to do presenting. I would love to do things like that and just be across like all the sports because I just love every sport. But she asked for me to have an interview after London Marathon, and I was there with the first British female and the first British male, I think. And someone was like, why, one of the other athletes was actually like, why are you having an interview? Because like, you didn't place anywhere. And I was like, yeah, but I don't think that's what I'm here to talk about.
That is something that you're going to have to accept. I think and then not just running, anywhere. Like there's always going to be a minority, and certainly I find from the competitive side of things, there is a minority of runners that it's not about the sport, it's about them. And you'll sieve those out quite quickly. And actually, like for that individual to say that, that's them thinking about what they are lacking rather than what you're having. And ultimately, if we all love this sport, it's not about just us enjoying it. It's about getting as many people into the sport as possible. And so, to be honest, who has more benefit to the sport? You do. And that's why you've been interviewed, because ultimately people will relate to your story more. So, you are unfortunately going to come up against that more than once. But I think, it's a process. Just kill it with kindness.
This week's episode is sponsored by Runner. Runner is a personalized running coaching app helping runners of all abilities train for any goal, from a first 5K to a marathon, even an ultra marathon. When the time is right for you, your plan can be created within a minute and ready to go. With each plan, Runner provides all the help a runner requires, including strength and conditioning, and you can also reach out to the team at any time via the support tab inside the app. For a 2-week free trial on any personalized running plan, use the code PHOENIX. No matter your goal, Runner is there to help you achieve it.
Yeah, it's kind of mad, but some of the all the supportive messages I get are just from like normal people saying how inspiring like I am, which still blows my mind. But I do guess that is my message, that's my legacy I want to set. But yeah, it's like some of the pros that are less kind. I've had
That's fuel. That's fuel, right? Like, can you use that as motivation?
Yeah, 100%. And it's definitely like, don't listen to them. But just kind of people like laughing at me, being like, oh, she's not. Like, I went on a training camp to South Africa and people were laughing, being like, that was a holiday, not a training camp. Like, Anya's not going to position anywhere at London Marathon. And it is a bit like, as I say, like, I'm in my head, when I actually think about it, I feel like I'm really smashing everything and I'm really proud of everything that I'm doing, that I can still convey this message, that I'm still running really well, that I'm kind of like loving everything I'm doing and I'm working really hard and I'm doing that across the board, and that is probably more successful to me than running a 10-second PB. Like, I could have ran more laps around Battersea Park before London Marathon and maybe got a 10-second PB, but I said yes to so many life experiences and met so many amazing people and did so many things that is worth far more to me.
I was going to say, like, when you went to South Africa, did it fulfill you?
Yeah, so I kind of went out there because I'd fallen out of love with running a bit. Like, I was crying like in sessions. Like, I'd start and like within 1K in I'd just be like really upset that I wasn't performing to my best, and then I had to take myself away and reflect and be like, you're still a very good runner, Anya.
But then, what I would then say to that is, when you were in South Africa, truthfully, were you even the strongest runner there?
No.
Right.
No.
But did you fall back in love with the sport?
Yeah.
So that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. I was around friends and also elite runners. And as I say, like, the elite runners were really kind to me and being like, yeah, you inspire us. And then even around London Marathon, I was like, they wanted the best for me. And so you better run well for them, kind of thing. And
100%. And it's so interesting, isn't it, how people can comment on things and they kind of view it from, I guess, their own view. But you going there wasn't to be the best runner. I think what you've just highlighted is that it was just for you to fall back in love with the sport. And I mean, isn't that so interesting that, I guess from an outsider's point of view, when you look at the successes that you've had, to think that you could fall out of love with the sport, wouldn't even come to mind.
Yeah, but I think that's because I started, thinking my mindset wasn't how it used to be. So when I first got into running, I think a lot of people sign up for a race now and they're like, I want to get, sub 3 hours. And that's their one focus. Like, times came secondary to me. I was running for mental health. I was running because I genuinely enjoyed it. I wouldn't know how far I'd ran ever. Like, my track sessions were so many laps of the field. Like, they weren't a distance. They weren't anything. And then, I think, so the times came secondary. I got better and better. secondary to that. And then, yeah, the times then started putting too much pressure on me, and that's kind of why.
Do you feel though, with what you've been through, again, that's a huge asset in the sense that there are so many people coming into this sport who naturally will find themselves in a similar position?
So running is actually like the most varied sport ever. Like whether you do crazy challenges like whether you're a 100-meter runner, whether you're a trail runner, a road runner, a track runner, like they're almost all separate sports, and you've got to find what you enjoy, and no one is better or a higher achievement than the other, really. Like the reason we all do each of those is to try our hardest and be our best at doing that specific thing. So like you don't have to compare yourself to everybody else. I think a lot of people are doing these crazy challenges at the moment, and it's almost like, oh, I've done a marathon, I better run further next time. But I think I found my love, which is the marathon. And you have asked me if I'm going to do a crazy challenge, and I would, because I genuinely would, because I want to challenge myself, and that is the original reason I got into running, like to challenge myself and to like inspire people, and that is exactly what your crazy challenges do. And I would, but yeah, to be competitive, I think the marathon's for
But I
me.
think you are being versatile, aren't you? Because you're not just focusing now on the marathon. You've got, triathlons, your Ironmans that you're getting yourself into, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, I've kind of loved doing those. So I've got my first half Ironman at the weekend, but that's almost been like bringing it back to basics, and like that's also helped me fall back in love with running, because suddenly now with my cycling and swimming, I am such a newbie again, and everything is so exciting, and I'm learning so much from everybody else around me, and I am just like a sponge, like absorbing things. And I found people like Lucy Charles Barkley, who's now my biggest inspiration ever, and it just like broadens your horizons. And yeah, I almost think, well, we'll see how this weekend goes, but I think I love movement. I love challenging myself. I love feeling good. And that doesn't have to be, oh, I can run a really quick 400-meter time.
Yeah. Do you find you have to expose yourself, I guess, to different environments and realities in order to keep reminding yourself of your love for the sport?
Yes, definitely. Like it's so easy to just have tunnel vision and like run on autopilot and yeah, forget everything else around you. I think you need all these external things to inspire you. Yeah, I think it's otherwise it's just so lonely.
Do you know what I think is really nice though? And this is coming from Norfolk, is that you have someone to invest in. Like that's a county that is just so unbelievably proud of you. And when you go and do Norwich, again, they have someone to like champion. And for places like Norfolk, it's a beautiful county, but like not a lot necessarily goes on there. We've got a fairly mediocre football team. Probably going to get absolutely hammered for saying that. So like for somebody like yourself in running, like it's so special.
Yeah, I do love Norfolk, God's county. I think when pride is like the main driver for me, and whether that's me being proud of myself or trying to do other people proud or trying to do like my legacy proud, like in London Marathon this year, I was at the back of the elites. I ran the entire marathon alone, but it was such an achievement to be in the elites in the first place. I waved goodbye to everybody within the first kilometre, but I could hear like almost every single bit of encouragement because I was by myself, because I didn't have any distractions near me, and it was so emotional. And like I was like welling up the majority of the marathon.
But I mean, again, even if you're running in isolation, like that just gives people an opportunity to just see you and highlight the amazing things that you're doing. Whether you were first or dead last, like you've earned your spot to be there. And I think it was a great thing, London Marathon or whoever it was that put you in that position. And, the thing is that you're not taking it for granted, and you put the hard work into it. It's not something that you just, I think, expect from them. I've seen the level of work that you put into your training. You take it unbelievably serious. But again, I think what's really nice is that you do have that balance where you showcase to people that you do have a social life and you do live your life. And, yes, you commit your life to running, but not necessarily the entirety of it. And I think that's a really relatable thing, because not everybody has the luxury of time to just commit themselves to one singular thing.
Yeah, definitely. I just wouldn't be in it if all I did was running.
Well, it feels like for you to be the best version of yourself and to love running in its entirety, you can't give yourself entirely to the sport.
Yeah, that's it. That's definitely it. Yeah, I don't know. Talking what you were just saying, like I still get. I'm still worried. Like it was beginner's luck. I'm still worried that I was. Yeah, I was a one trick pony or whatever when I ran one race for England. But but then also, I also don't believe that. Like I do know I've got so much more to give, but yeah, I think just self doubt is my biggest. That's my Achilles heel, and I have moments all the time where I'm like this is all gonna go away from me, or everybody else is better, or I don't know. Like,
Do you know what? I think you can have all the accolades in the world, but if you can't connect with people, I think the connection is everything. And I think you're doing, a fantastic job of that. Even at like the National Running Show this year, like seeing people come up to you and the impression that you've made on their lives is just, it's so surreal and it's so special. When we were on that panel discussion on the main stage together and just listening to you articulate yourself and just seeing people, in the crowd just absorbing every word that you said, it's just such an incredible journey and in such a condensed period of time. And the thing is, you're so young still. You've got so many years ahead of you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I forgot when you did the National Running Show panel together.
Yeah.
That was really special because you genuinely have been like little guardian angels cropped up at like different points of my running career. No, genuinely, you really have. Yeah, that's all I can kind of hope for, and that's me when I need to like check myself and be like, yeah, you did this, Anya. Like no one else actually got you to this position. Like as I say, no one in my family has ever ran. I was so naive at the start of my running. That's what kind of got me through it. And it was that not overthinking and just be you and never change that. And that is what inspired people, just me. As soon as I try to do something else or as soon as I overthink it, that's when it all goes pear-shaped.
I mean, your psychological state is something that fascinates me. You once said that you are good at facing tough things. Why is that?
I have a really strong head on me, and I do think I can do difficult things, and that is a lot my mindset is a lot what I put my running down to, and just like not limiting myself. Maybe I'm in a very fortunate position that I've got people around me that have done crazy, incredible things, like even like yourself. And I can draw upon that and be like, well, if they can do it, like, why can't I? I've always been like hard working, but maybe not in the conventional sense, and maybe that's the same with my running, that I am hardworking and I've done well and I've got to where I am, but not in the conventional sense. I don't know. I think, well, I started my running journey. I basically just lost my sparkle. I had like some health complications just before lockdown. I can talk about it, I don't mind. I had an overactive thyroid. I had a benign tumour. I was on steroids. I couldn't really exercise for a while because my heart rate would just like raise through the roof, and I couldn't do any like extreme exercise and things. And then when that all calmed down, that was when I was like, oh, let's like use this now. And I think I returned to that quite a lot with my training. And I think there's also, sorry, there's so many things. I in marathons, I always associate each mile with a reason for running that mile, and that's kind of my mental mindset for that. So I have to do each mile and just focus on that 1 mile, get through that mile, and then it's the next one, then it's the next one, and I've got to do it for each person. And even like my godmother, I think about her a lot. She unfortunately died of motor neuron disease, but just before she passed away, she was even doing crazy challenges. She was one of the pink ladies, and she basically it was a motorized wheelchair, but she went from Land's End to John O'Groats, and they were calling themselves the two pink ladies. And I think about her all the time, and I'd be like, she'd be so proud of me doing this. So
yeah, unbelievably so. And I think adversity can create wonderful things. And I think what you went through as well is utilizing that.
I don't know whether I talk about these things.
Oh, right.
I can. There was one guy in my life who made my life really difficult when I first got good at running. And it definitely was a thing where he couldn't believe it was jealousy. Like, that is the main thing that why people bring you down. And he made this group chat and he put loads of elite athletes in it, like obviously everybody he had in his phone book, and just titled it and just put a message in, like being like, Anya's a drugs cheat. And then I had messages from elite athletes who I was like, how do they even know who I am? Just being like, ignore him, like keep doing what you're doing, like keep smashing it. And then there was someone being like, no offense, we know you're not doping, like you'd be quicker than 2:34. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I use that kind of adversity a lot because I want to prove him wrong, and I know I've done this myself. But I think maybe the positivity spurs me on more than the adversity. Just being like, I want to do everybody proud. There's reasons people look up to you, and you do it for them.
Oh, 100%. And also, like, don't shy away from utilizing the negative at all. Like, I've seen gurus and specialists, they talk about not holding on to negative energy. It's not a case of holding on to it. It's a case of utilizing it. Like, when I'm in my toughest moments, I think about so many people that have done me wrong, because that anger is just within. And so I need to convert it into something. And so I utilize these experiences to get that out of my system. And it really does fire me up. Unfortunately, as many people as there are out there that want to see you succeed, there's also a lot that really want to see you fail. And that, again, just is a lack of what is going on within them. And it's a shame, but that's just the reality of life. And it's just how you react to that. You are going to find that the more successful you become and the more you achieve, fortunately, as I said, the more people you will come into contact like that. And ultimately, it's how you react to them is going to be the most important thing.
Yeah. Your challenges are so different to mine, though. Like, mine are getting it over and done with as soon as I possibly can. You've got like another 57 days to go. Like,
yeah, I mean, but our whys are going to be potentially quite different. I mean, although we're trying to inspire people, there's just ways in which we can do it. For me, I've said this many times, it's about, with men, it's a really hard task to connect with a male. And most males seem to be very much drawn to, in my opinion, the wrong type of role model. The Andrew Tates or the Conor McGregors, both very successful, but both controversial in the way that they present themselves. And so for me, it was a case of quite clearly men were drawn to the masculinity or the physical element. So if I could test myself to that limit, but do it in a way that I think is healthy and more conventional, then that's the way that I guess I sort of faced and presented it. And it has been effective, but obviously it is very much at the kind of extreme end of the spectrum. But like, I'm fulfilled by that. Like, I look at you and, I'm in awe of how you are able to maintain that pace. That being said, I think what's really important is the comparison side of things. When people ask you the question of like, what marathon was harder, the 2:34 or the what was it, the
4:34.
4:34, what would be the answer?
The 4:34. Well, actually, they were kind of both. I don't think Kipchoge is trying his absolute hardest and pushing himself to the max, and so is Anya running a 4:34. Yeah, it depends.
It's all relative, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what's interesting, is that I think people almost put you on a pedestal where the faster you run, they think the harder it is. But the reality is, when you first started out and you're running those initial marathons, you don't have that muscle or my memory.
Yeah.
It's and also it's a completely new physical element. Like, your body hasn't had time to adapt to it. It's fresh.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of why I love all these run clubs in London now. I know there's so many of them, but it's not about speed. Like, and they don't know they might know who Kipchoge is, but they don't know who won the 800 meters last night. Like, yeah, it's not about that for them, which is kind of bringing running back to why I started it in the first place, just community.
When you look at run clubs as well, like, you know, I've heard a lot of people recently saying, oh, there's too many run clubs, or this one's better. There's no such thing as a better run club. It's just about finding a run club that suits you. And actually, the more run clubs there are, the more people we can get into running, the better it is for the sport. So I'm all for it, to be honest.
100%. Yeah, I think... Yeah, exactly. I think my generation, or maybe the generation after me, is the first generation where over half of my generation actually run, which is amazing. Like, that's so cool. We're such a healthier generation. But like England athletics and that, and all these old school coaches and things, running does need a change up. Like, there's the new Netflix series coming out, which is Speed, I think it's called, and it's focusing on the lives of professional runners, and I think that's amazing, and it will give them a chance to like get their personalities across, because at the end, that's why everyday person knows who someone is on social media, not who on the 800 meters. But yeah, giving them the platform, giving people the chance to get to know them, that is also gonna, they're not going to be untouchable anymore, and they are going to be more relatable, and people will have that connection to them, which is going to be amazing for the sport.
Who in your life would you say are like the key figures that humble you and keep you on track?
You? My boyfriend's very good at humbling me, keeping me on track in kind of a joking way, but also my biggest supporter. He just kind of knows what I want, what I need to hear rather than what I want to hear. My mum does the opposite, and my mum gasses me up more than anyone else. I do, and then my friend Holly Archer is like a really big person in my mind, and she has gone from being a professional athlete with a contract which was all down to times and money and paces, and they wanted her to go out to America and live and train there, and she wasn't fulfilled by that. Her times got worse and worse, and she kind of again fell out of love with it, and she just like cut all ties with her sponsor. She's now gone solo, having to buy her own kit, having to buy her own sheets, and she's running better than ever. And she's very good at making me check my privileges and keeping me humble and keeping me inspired and motivated.
Yeah, because I feel like that's something that so many people could learn from, because I think it is really important. Again, whether you are just a casual first-time runner or an elite level runner, you know, I think even a casual runner is going to find criticisms in themselves or get carried away with things. You know, Strava is something that is often raised, although it's an incredible platform, it's also a platform of comparison, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's great for people to hear that they do need to align themselves with certain people just to keep them in check.
Yeah, definitely. Strava's a weird one because it's so many of my friends are so good at running now that it's so easy to think that I'm like falling behind in things. But we all live different lives. Like, some of them don't have jobs, some of them do. We can't all be doing the same thing. I've tried to like make my training, instead of a 7-day week, it's like a 10-day period, because, and just not be afraid to like push a session back the next day if I'm not feeling up to it, because I prefer to get the quality out of that run than just like to tick it off, because that is what I was doing at the start because I didn't have Strava, and that's what got me good at running in the first place, but not worrying about that graph.
Yeah, because you weren't having rest days. I remember ages ago when we were talking about this, you were just running consecutive weeks.
Yeah, and part of that was really good, and that was just because I was loving it, and I genuinely was fine for a long time of doing that, and it was genuine because I wanted to run because I felt energized. And then there was a bit where I felt like I almost had to, otherwise I was going to lose fitness. There was a point where I was definitely overtraining, and I like lost my period and things, and there's you can do that for so long, and you run really well for a tiny bit, and then you're suddenly so underfueled, your body hates you, and everything plummets really fast. And I think that's kind of going back to when I was like, I had that emotional maturity because I started late enough to be like, well, Anya, this is not why you started running. Like, oh, what's happening? You don't want this to become an issue. And I had amazing friends around me who also picked up on it. But yeah, that was bad at one point. And my new coach, James T, he actually asked me if I had a regular period cycle, because he was just like, well, it's a big risk to take on someone who who doesn't, and he was like, you need your body to be able to absorb that training that we're doing, otherwise you're just going to keep wearing yourself down. And there was a time when I was so tired every day, and it was when I was like almost running my best though, which is the hard bit. Yeah, as I say, you can do it for so long until you suddenly can't, but I was like, I needed naps. I was so tired. I was like losing friends. All I was thinking about was running and times and races. And yeah, I wasn't getting any enjoyment out of it.
So I think that's the issue, isn't it? Is that if people don't prioritize the recovery element with the volume of training, it is going to become counterproductive, right? And actually, when you look at the elite level runners, I was reading an article on quite a well-known British runner who went out to go train with the Kenyans. And for him, it was such a culture shock where it was almost too relaxed for his mindset, where, these guys would nap anywhere from 2 to 3 times a day. And if they weren't napping, they were probably just reading. And for him, the lack of stimulation, I think, is what he found the most challenging. But ultimately, when you look at the volume of running that you're doing and the distances that you're covering per day, not always at a high intensity, but a high volume of distance nonetheless, you've got to counter it with something.
Yeah, it's so true. Like at that point, I was still eating like a normal person, but I was training so extraordinarily. Yeah, so I think that was really important to remember that. But I know who you're talking about with that. And I also know the Kenyans like have this thing where every single Sunday they do just have a rest day, and that's their thing. And there are so many elites that literally never have a rest day. Another thing my new coach said, like, I'm a big advocate for rest days, and yeah, you need your body to have time to absorb training. We've got to have like longevity in the sport. There's no point in doing one race and never being able to get back there. I think it's really hard. Once you first get a stress fracture, it's so easy to pick up another one, and then it's really hard for you to get back to where you like originally were. And so many people like really early starting in the sport, and they almost don't realize what they're doing to their bodies then, and then it's so hard for them in adulthood to keep pushing it, and keep like having progressive overload in their training. So yeah, that's almost why I'm really pleased I picked it up as an adult, because
I think it's good though that you are investing your attention into different things, because I think that's where you can keep your love for each individual sport, utilizing that time, even your downtime, just focusing on something else, because the time away, the heart does grow fonder with it. Whenever I've come out of challenges, I really do take that time seriously in the sense that I just switch off from everything. And it's so important, whereas I'm starting to see this cycle now that concerns me a little bit, where people almost get so caught up in the hype and the validation from other people that they just throw themselves into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I don't know how sustainable that actually is.
But I think that's just us. Like, we just need to chase the next high all the time. Like, obviously we both know Imo, and she's the most amazing person in the world. And you actually ran with her, didn't you, for her last world record attempt? But I was chatting to her, and she was like, I have the worst blues like ever, and I just kind of don't know what to do with myself now. But yeah, she is also taking time off, which is amazing. But yeah, and I think running, as soon as you get a PB, you get the PB, yeah, but then it's like the next one you're chasing and the next one. And are you ever fulfilled if you're constantly chasing? Like, it's so important to reflect and like celebrate those little wins.
It's interesting the point you made there about Imo obviously just finishing the 3 peaks in a record time, because actually, and this isn't singling Imo out, but just in general, this is an abundance of various different individuals who have done challenges, is that actually when they post things, it always relates back to the challenge, because that's what people identify with. But very rarely do we actually showcase the process post-challenge of recovery. Enjoying the silence, the calmness that comes with it, because I think that is as important as the challenge itself. People can learn so much from that, but instead, and I'm guilty of this as well, before, where you're putting stories out there of like, what should I do next? You know, if I look at like Harder Skies, an example, his stories constantly now are just sort of, you know, what should I do next? And is kind of like alluding to different things. And he's now running to Germany.
Yes.
Now, he's an exceptional human being, you know, and that is what fulfills him. He's a great guy. But it's one of those things of like, physically, it's only sustainable, I guess, until the body starts to showcase that it's not. And clearly his body right now is capable of achieving the things that he's doing. But long term, like, how long can that process be? And does it get to the point with it where it stops becoming fulfilling because you're putting too much pressure on yourself?
Yeah. Well, that's when people bounce back like the hardest, when people have had big injuries. And then, yeah, they bounce back so quickly because they're just so grateful just to be back doing the simple thing of running again. Or if you have a baby, like, you're back after your baby, like, running again, you've got new motivation, like, do it for them and do it for your little one. And I think, yeah, that's gonna 2 steps back, 4 steps forwards kind of thing. It's not a linear progression. You can't just keep going because, yeah, you might break.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess trial and error, right? It's kind of a bit like, you know, how often do our parents say like, I want to tell you these things to stop you from making these mistakes, but you kind of push back. You're like, I kind of need to make these mistakes myself to learn it, to understand that feeling.
Yeah.
To make me want to prevent from doing that again.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, I think we're at probably a point in our journey where we maybe have learned those sorts of things, and sometimes it might take someone a little bit longer. I think the key thing is just like how you connect or articulate yourself so that no individual necessarily feels villainized or outed.
Yeah.
I think it's more just a case of, listen, if you're happy to continue doing that, I have my view on it, and as a friend or someone that knows you, I'll share that view. Whether you wish to accept it or not is really, it's up to you.
I was actually saying to you yesterday, like, I was really worried to talk about my older, slower marathon times because on social media, because I thought that made me seem like less professional and less pro and things like that. But that is what people care about, and they just, they can learn from your mistakes, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, as Anya just said there, like on the phone, she was saying to me, she almost didn't want to be like the progress poster girl. And actually, that's what made her stand out. She wanted to be acknowledged, I guess, for her performances, but then ultimately she would blend in, I guess, with everybody else out there. And actually, you know, your USP is your story. You know, people need hope in life and to believe in themselves. But to do that, they have to be exposed to, you know, your sorts of reality, which is so unbelievably special. What were the years you have ahead of you? Like, what is going to make you the happiest person?
Honestly, almost continuing what I'm doing. I'm in a really, really happy space at the moment, and that brings me so much joy. I would love to be the best runner I can possibly be whilst also being really happy. I want to continue smashing work, which, again, brings me so much joy. And I'm so grateful that I do love my work, and I'm grateful that I'm able to run. And I really just want to be able to keep doing it. And I want it to be on my terms. I am almost petrified of being injured and not being able to do it. I don't know how I'd cope with that. And I think about friends who've been injured all the time that keep me going and keep me motivated in the kind of like, I'm so lucky to be doing this. I think that I would love another England vest. Of course I would. I'm a really competitive person. I know it's not about times, but as long as I do that sustainably and enjoyably, that will bring me so much joy.
You just the nicest thing about you is you just don't stop smiling. You are, even if internally at times you've been going through some stuff, like you just, you know, you are just the most positive person. And I just think the sport is so lucky to have somebody like you in it. And I really hope that many men, women and children will continue to be inspired. And like, we're having this conversation now off the back of bumping into one another in Norfolk all those years ago. And I can't wait for you to have these same conversations with other people where that journey continues.
I would love to be that person for someone else in 10, 20, 30 years time.
Maybe that's the moral of the story. Just be that person for somebody else, you know, just continue that ripple effect.
Exactly. Yeah.
Honestly, like I've loved having you on, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
I love you. I'm proud of you. I adore your mum. She can hug me anytime. She's a phenomenal hugger.
She'll love that so much.
And I just can't wait to see you at your next race. Is there
Thank
anything
you.
you would like to say to these wonderful people around the world that are listening to you right now?
I think just don't limit yourself. I think it can always turn out better than you could ever imagine. So yeah, don't ever, you can raise the ceiling as high as you want.
What a way to end the episode. Anya, thank you, and I love you.
Thanks, Josh.
Boom.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, you fatted biscuit, all I ask of you in return is that you push that subscribe button and leave a review. Unless it's a bad one, you can keep that, your sausage. Your support, though, makes such a difference to this podcast and enables it to grow and connect with even more people around the world.